Hi, I'm Amy, and welcome to my channel. I'm a relationship mentor and I specialize in healing attachment styles so that you can feel secure and fulfilled in your relationships. And today I've got Agnes Vivarelli. I've known Agnes for quite some time. Really, at the beginning of my journey, she is the very first coach that I used. So welcome, Agnes. Thank you so much for doing this interview today. How are you?
Good. Thanks for inviting me. And yeah, I'm excited because this is a topic that's very dear to you and I personally, as well as for the work we do. So yeah, it's wonderful.
Absolutely. And you're in the UK at the moment, enjoying our
Yep.
weather as
Yeah.
well, which is nice. I bet you've not seen it sunny before.
It's getting better. It's getting better.
Brilliant. Well, in
Yeah.
today's video, what me and Agnes are going to discuss today is what our different journeys have been on the path to having a secure relationship. In last week's video, I did touch on this a bit, and I explained that there's an awful lot of content out there that's telling you that you can do this. We were just discussing before the video, actually. First it was 30 days, then it was 21 days, then it was a week, then it was 24 hours. And the timescales just keep on getting shorter and shorter and shorter. And I did fall into this. I thought, oh, good, I can get this within a day. And I didn't. And then I started thinking, there must be something wrong with me, because they're saying to me, this person is saying to me I can do it within a day, and I can't. And I couldn't figure out why. And, I completely laid all the blame at my doorstep. I don't know whether you felt sort of the same, Agnes, because your journey's been longer than mine, hasn't it? Mine's been about, nearly 6 years now. Just can you tell us a bit on how your journey first started?
The journey with my current partner, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, it started off where, lots of attraction, living in different countries. And this is the funny thing, he thought I was in Liverpool, UK, and I was in Liverpool, Sydney.
Oh, right. Oh, okay.
And he said, when would you like to get together? And I said, well, I'll have to come and see you next time I come to France. And he said, what are you talking about? Aren't you in Liverpool? I said, yeah. And then we worked out, because Sydney is modeled on London, as in a lot of the names of the towns and all of that are the same. So he said to me later, we wouldn't have continued if I'd thought you were in another country. I would have let that go. So it was very interesting that we kept talking, and he's quite a turtle rather than a rabbit. So he took his time in conversation. By the time he realized I was in Australia, we were kind of hooked in and connected a little bit. So it was a wonderful thing to not be able to access each other physically in a way, because it means you don't deal with the physical side, you deal with getting to know somebody and all of that. And also, I had been working on myself for quite some time. I think by the time I met him, I'd already read Neville for 20 years, and Louise Hay and Abraham Hicks have been around for a very long time too. So although I knew all this, it was that once I got connected to wanting to be with him, I was more emotionally and mentally invested, that I thought, okay, I'm going to visualize, I'm going to imagine being in London, I'm going to imagine us seeing each other and all of that. And although we communicated daily, but the frustration level pretty quickly escalated because we weren't able to see each other. And then it became pretty clear, because he has a child and I don't, that it would be me that would have to come here, because in those days his child was quite small and he was dad. He had to play dad on a daily basis. So it ended up that I was doing Neville imagining, I was affirming, I was doing meditations, I was doing a vision board, I was doing Ho'oponopono, I was doing all this stuff, but I just couldn't work out why it was taking so long, which is what you and I were talking about. you know, it did take time to, one, believe it was possible, and two, I blame myself as well. Like, you mustn't be doing it right. Why is it taking so long? Your self-love mustn't be good enough, and all of that. And I think, you know, because a lot of people on YouTube were selling the bright, shiny object of manifest in 30 days or whatever, I started feeling like a failure and inadequate and not good enough at law of attraction, even though I had all those years under my belt. It started to breed this real inadequacy in me. And I mean, it took, you know, lots of trips going back and forth, and then me having a job in those days. I couldn't leave for more than a month a year. And then that got frustrating because can't have a relationship when you see someone for a month. And then working out, do I move to London? If I get there, I'm going to find a job. It's an expensive city. Oh my goodness, I'm going to need at least 100,000 to be able to pull this off and go back to Australia and all this. So I had high level inadequacy, high level insecurity, and high level doubt. Like, am I ever going to be able to do this? Despite everything I know, I have to let go of a job, let go of my apartment, let go of living in this country, let go of how is this going to work. I had to know that I was either going to have to work for somebody. And when I first came to London, I was looking for a job, because in those days I hadn't done the coaching course or any of the things I do now. So it was a massive learning curve with money, relocation, and then knowing that this person would want to be with me if I could get all that other stuff to work. You know, and he said to me, I don't expect you to leave your whole life and come and be here with me. You know, he didn't expect that, which was great. But, you know, I wanted to come, and I love moving around. I've lived in a few different countries, and I thought, oh, you know, it'd be nice to go somewhere else. And if I can work for myself, then I can come back anytime I want, you know, as long as we discuss it. So, but yeah, that it was our childhood stuff would just keep hitting us. And, you know, it just was really tough to be able to dismantle that over the years. And sometimes it would get really good, and then other times it would crash and burn. And then other times it was good, and then the frustration, not being able to see each other, the physical frustration, the sexual frustration, you're in a relationship, but you're not really, because the person's not in your daily life, just on the phone or on Zoom. So it was a weird time, but I think a big part of making it work was letting go of getting it done in 30 days or 1 week or whatever. Because
exactly. Yeah.
And as you and I said, oh, sorry, Amy, go ahead.
When you get into a relationship, regardless if it's long distance or not, you can guarantee that your relationship or attachment trauma is going to come up. You were mentioning it was up and down, up and down, up and down. And really, I mean, that is normal though, isn't it? It is normal. And what I notice is that people get into relationships, they hit a seeming block, and then it's, oh, that's it, you know. And I've done the same, where things have gone bad and thought, oh gosh, that must mean we're not meant to be together. But really, it was just trauma. It was just fear coming up that needed to be healed and handled. And and then you move on. It isn't the end of the world. But it sounds like you had a multitude. I mean, you were obviously, it wasn't just like your job, your nationality as well. You know, moving over here, and you said, well, we're the other side of the world to you, aren't we? So
it was. Yeah, it's 26 hours on a plane away, and I was thinking, what am I doing? You know, I remember the first time I came to see him, I was on the plane and I had really bad stomach pain. And I was thinking, what if I go and see him and he's really weird and I disappear off the face of the earth, no one ever sees me again? You know, so I was texting friends going, look, this is my location, this is where I'm going to meet him, you know, because I had to cover myself. I didn't know him at all. I mean, you know someone online, it's very different to knowing someone in person. So so that was a learning curve. Obviously, the first time I met him, he put me at ease, and it was all fine, and it's been, ongoing since then. But I do think, and you and I just talked about this before we started recording, watching people on YouTube or listening to people's blogs or social media sites or wherever you go to get information, it's listening to people that have not only manifested a specific person, but have been able to maintain it. And if you don't know those things about the person you're listening to, find out, because this whole bright, shiny object syndrome that's going on now, and it's got progressively, it's like a ball rolling down the hill. It's picked up momentum over the years since I started YouTubing. The manifest in, I saw a video because of the genre. I don't watch any YouTubes around what I do because I stay in my lane and I try not to get affected by the trends and all of that. I just try and follow my intuition on what I do. But I saw, because of my video was coming up and I was doing some editing stuff within the YouTube, some videos started popping up, and I just saw the thumbnail, manifest your SP in an hour. And I just thought, well, I won't say what I thought because there was some swear words in it, but I was just thinking, what are we peddling here? Peddling this get quick fix thing. It's not real. And you and I were both saying that we fell for that stuff in the beginning.
Absolutely. And, would I love a quick fix? Of course I would. Everybody wants a quick fix, don't we? But, and I'd, as you say, I'd really fallen into that and really sort of thought, well, they're saying that it's possible and I can't do it, so it must be a problem with me.
That's it.
And, it's what we've got to look at is these successes are, they are few and far between anyway. And also, are they happy? Are they still in the relationship? What have they actually manifested? Contact, marriage? What is it that they're saying? It's so vague that, and it's a real shame that people are falling for it, because when you go on the journey that we've been on, the benefits of the journey almost, well, they do outweigh what the end result is, or what there isn't an end, but what the desire is, because really you discover so much about yourself and you heal the relationship to yourself that much, that actually you start becoming a different person and you start not needing it, and the desperation sort of goes away, and you find things out about yourself that you never even knew before. And I'm not saying that the journey is easy, it's certainly no walk in the park, but the reason why, my belief is, the reason why we desire relationships in the first place is so that all of this stuff comes up, so you can just let go of it. And as I said to you before, Agnes, I specialize in healing attachment styles, which is a massive area, and it's such a big part of you, because you can't let go of your attachment style overnight, because ultimately your attachment style is what you think has kept you safe for your entire life. You can't just cut ties with it and let it go and become, all of a sudden overnight, become secure. That isn't a realistic expectation. But having said that, when I did discover what my attachment style was, and a light bulb went off, and I thought, oh, okay, this is why I act like I act in relationships. I should probably do something about this. And look at it with more of a curiosity. But none of these videos, certainly that I've seen, really touch on anything to do with that. They're more making affirmations about the other person to sort of control the other person. And just picking up on something that you said that your partner was a tortoise, not a rabbit. And that's another thing too. I see a lot of this where people are so desperate to get that person and not really considering that you know, the other party is not the same as you. They might
Mm.
need time. And, you know, my partner certainly did. My partner's trauma is different than mine. My partner's belief systems are different than mine. I'm
Yeah.
certainly not, you know, in any sort of belief that I control him in any way.
Yeah.
What would be your number one tip for anybody who is dealing with a similar situation to you, with the frustration, with the, you know, things taking too long? How did you personally deal with those anxious feelings?
Well, I think it's really just saying, okay, why am I anxious? I'm anxious because I've got a fear of loss. I've got a fear of abandonment. I've got a fear that this won't work. I have a fear that my dream will be shattered. And then you go, okay, that's a possibility. That's a possibility. But it doesn't mean that I'm going to die, which is how abandonment pain feels, which is how a fear of loss is like a horrible thing. It'll stop you eating, sleeping, all sorts of things. So it's like, I thought, okay, I would identify myself in those days as an anxious attachment person, and I often attracted avoidance. So I knew my dynamic very well. Now it was a case of, okay, I've done X amount of years of self-love and Neville and all that stuff, but you never see how well you're doing until you're in a relationship again. You can ride high with a sense of confidence that will be quickly shattered once you enter a relationship. It will humble you once again. So, you know, you get your self-love up in between relationships and you feel good, and then you step in and you're ready. And now the real work begins of, now I've got to see what comes up while I'm within this dynamic, and then do some deeper work on this. And I think the more you, it's like you're sifting through more things while you're single, while you get back into a relationship, and the big one after you're out of the honeymoon phase. Because the honeymoon phase, you think, oh, I've met my person, this is amazing, this feels so good. Of course it does. It's brand new. You don't have a history. But once you get past, sometimes it's 3 months, sometimes 6, sometimes it's a year, depending on how long your honeymoon phase lasts for. Once you start going into some emotional stuff about the relationship, that's when the real work begins, because it's the maintenance part. That's when, like you say, you're brought together for this stuff to come up. And if you've got the know-how and the insight that this is what's happening, then you can work on it and clear it to the point where you can really stabilize the anxiousness, the abandonment fear, and all these things. You're not possessed by it, because you're possessed, you know, when it hits you, it's like, you know, you can't get a grip, and it's tough. So I think for me, it was really I'm looking at for external love. I'm trying to get, I'm needy. This stuff comes from my childhood because my needs weren't met, especially by the father. And therefore, I am now left with that my issues come up with men in romantic sexual relationships. So I can see all that. Now, what am I going to do about it? I've got to process my old emotions. I did the work of Brandon Bays. And her stuff in particular was excellent, because she goes back into the childhood wounds, and then you deal with letting the body release those emotions from that time, and then the anxiousness drops
Yeah, and
considerably.
I think this is the sort of puzzle piece that people are missing, and I think this is what prevents people from really doing deep inner work, is that they don't really see what the point of it is.
Yes.
I'm just thinking about things that I don't want to think about, or, you know, I'm thinking about things that are the old story.
Yes.
And, you know, I mustn't think, but you do need to see them. You
Yeah.
do need to feel the emotions that come up with it, because that's where the gems are.
Yeah.
That is ultimately what is going to shape you. And, you know, you mentioned before about your fear of loss, fear of abandonment. It's so important to look at these things, because in life, fear is what shapes us. fear is how we learn about ourselves. And, you know, I was smiling when you said what you were saying, because that is my story as well. My fear of loss, my fear of abandonment. And you're right, it can completely bring you to a complete halt.
Yeah.
You know, and it's not easy being in a relationship with these fears, which is why it's so important to address it. And, you know, a lot of my issues came from my dad as well.
Yeah.
So I would subconsciously look for men that were exactly like him, and I couldn't understand why. All it was is that it was the inner child, inner teenager, really wanting to repair that relationship with him. And when you start connecting the dots, and seeing what your patterns are, that's so empowering, and that is what's going to, you know, really shape what your relationship's going to be like. Because I mean, I'm not sure about you, Agnes. I mean, I personally really struggled with boundaries as well in relationships, and I didn't have any at all. And I've been married before. I had zero boundaries. I was so afraid to set them. Because I thought that, oh, that person's not going to like me, or they're not going to listen to me, or I'm just being awkward if I ever, you know, and I'd be like, you know, really, really resistant. But actually, it was one of the most empowering things I ever did, was to set boundaries in relationships, because, you know, it was just important to me to be able to show up for myself. And, you know, I'd done all this work on loving myself more and working through my belief system, you know, and I thought, I've done too much work to throw that away or give it to somebody else. And it's you know, about finding that balance between self and other. You can have both. You can have both. There is plenty of space in you for both.
Totally.
But I used to sort of get sucked in like a Hoover, and self-love would go out the window, and then I'd just focus on the relationship. But now I can catch it. I think, okay, I'm not really showing up for myself at the moment. How can I show up for myself even more?
And not just go, okay, what do they want? I need to actually go, instead of just going, oh, what do they want? Let me give it to them. Because you're so automatically geared to do that, because you used to do that because you were trying to get love. Whereas now you go, hang on a minute, do I feel like doing that? Not right now, I don't. Maybe tomorrow. And you can be open and honest about, look, I would like to do that for you, but I'm really tired today and I just need to just go to bed early or something. So you're more open with what you need.
Exactly. And
it's good.
I've noticed a lot, because I mean, we live together now, but a lot of my past trauma had come from living with my parents and living particularly with Dad. And, you know, my partner was really resistant to moving in together at first, and I was, why wouldn't you want to live with me? And I was throwing it all at his doorstep, when actually it was me that was really afraid to live together, because for me, living together meant that I'd have no freedom, that I'd have no control over my life. I'd feel unsafe, and, you know, I really had to go in and heal all of that. So that when we moved in together, it would be, you know, how a relationship that's healthy. And you mentioned before about coming out of the honeymoon phase into the power struggle phase. And it's your self-love and your boundaries that are going to take you through the power struggle stage, so that you can get to the other side of that, which is what ultimately you really want, because on the other side of it is the intimacy, it's the vulnerability, and it's the acceptance of who you are completely by the other person. And, you know, I never ever got past the power struggle stage before. I didn't know what came after the power struggle. So, you know, it's just been a huge learning curve, and it all started with you.
Isn't that funny?
It really did.
So what did you find after the power struggle phase? What was there?
It's just easy.
It's
easy.
You're like, is that it?
Like, and you know, sometimes I do fall into old patterns, thinking, oh well, there must be a problem, because it shouldn't be this, it shouldn't be like this.
Yeah.
So I suppose the answer is yes, you can have the perfect relationship and the relationship you want.
You can. Once you deal with your own self.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and you stop doing, like you say, all these affirmations to change this other person. I'm not a big fan of that. I would have done that years ago too, but now,
I did do
yeah,
that.
no,
Yeah.
it's only the self to change, it's like, not saying you never talk about anything, but you're not discussing the relationship and what are we and what's going on here, and you're not doing, you don't have any of those types of conversations anymore. You're just living your life. You go for a walk, you come back, you do a bit of work, you exercise, you cook, you go shopping for food, you move around quietly, and it's calm. And I think I want to mention this too. I see this a lot, and I find I have quite a lot of clients that this is coming up over the years. And it's as soon as a relationship begins, or it goes on to year 1, year 2, whatever, this oversharing on social media platforms about all sorts of things, engagement, marriage. I even saw somebody even said to me, oh my God, they saw this whole someone giving birth to a baby on social media. And I was like, there is a very distinct line that I think is important to hold between private life and public life. And I think the line has become very blurred for many. And I think that's highly dangerous to a good relationship.
I would agree with that. And I'd also think it's sort of dangerous for people who were in our position to see, because people, when they see photos on social media, it's similar to the YouTube issue that we were talking about. You don't know what they're like. You do not know what their relationship is like.
Yeah.
Exactly. Of course they're taking a happy smiley photo for social media.
Yeah.
But the relationship may not well be as happy as it seems. And because I certainly fell into that trap of, oh, they've got what I wanted, what's different about them? So it's because I don't really do social media for this reason. It's I prefer to, I like YouTube, and I'm very selective of who I subscribe to, and it's I certainly want my story out there, but I'm not about to share the day-to-day,
the detail between you and me. And I think that's quite scary. And I do, people, I don't look at what other people are doing, because it's each to their own. Everybody's got the right to do it the way they want. But unfortunately, for 3 people that I know, the boomerangs come back and hit them, because they've posted all this stuff and then they've broken up. And then you're trying to uphold, then you don't post anything, you just leave the pictures up so no one knows you've broken up. So it's all this trying to present a certain way, but you've got to ask yourself, why am I posting all that stuff and sharing private text messages? Oh, she said this to me, he said that to me. Why are you posting your personal relationship? If my partner did that, I'd be having words to him. And he said the same to me. He said, if that ever happened, he'd be having words to me. And I thought, rightly so, because it's private. It's our private relationship. People don't need to know about certain things. And that's what makes it private. It's between him and me.
Exactly. And it just adds another level, another layer of stuff to deal with, doesn't it? I'm not saying that if you post on social media, your relationship's going to go bad. That's not what I'm saying. But if that happens, you've got to think when you are posting things, okay, how is this going to look to the other person?
That's it.
And I think in general, I think men are getting a really bad rap at the minute.
I do too.
And I think that sort of women have got this huge shopping list.
Yeah.
And men are feeling quite inadequate. And, I've seen as well on certain forums, people have sort of posted somebody's Tinder profile, for example.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I haven't heard that. Okay.
Basically saying, I want them to earn 100K, I want to have this car, I don't want to work, I want this, I want that, I want the other. And if he's not 6 foot, that's it, that's a no-go. And you know, it's such a shame, because
Yeah.
you know, you're missing out. Because I met my partner on a dating app.
Yeah.
And you know, it's just a dating app. Yeah, you know, it's not going to have someone's life story on it, is it?
Yeah. You find that out later.
Yeah, and I feel like, you know, women are saying, well, men should be able to feel their emotions more and be able to articulate their emotions more. But when they do, it's, oh, you're not being masculine enough for me. Yeah. And you know, I can't say that I didn't have certain expectations that, you know, at the time made sense, but I certainly haven't got them now. And you know, how would I feel if he was saying, well, you know, you should be this, that, and the other, you should be a typical woman, because I've got masculine traits. And you know, because I've lived on my own for so many years. You know, you just pick them up. So I would agree with the social media thing. And I think also, when you are actively trying to manifest somebody, social media is not your friend.
No, well said.
It really isn't. And you know, it muddies the waters so much, and there's so many opinions on there, and it you know, sometimes it's best to just maybe take a step back and focus on you, because the more that you focus on social media, really, you know, it is an avoidance tactic. So that you stop focusing on you, which is the, you know, what ultimately needs to change for you to have it, because it is addictive. It's addictive behavior, isn't it? But if you're manifesting your specific person, then try and take a break from social media and just trial it, just see how you get on, because I can guarantee you will start feeling a lot better.
I agree. And I think too, it's rare that I hear someone saying, oh yeah, I just went to see the social media, his social media or her social media, and you know, I'm happy to see that they're hiking. Or it's always, oh, I saw them with another man, or I saw them with another woman. And you know, I know one person did that, and 4 months later found out it was his cousin. You know, so tortured herself for 4 months thinking it was another woman, and it was a relative, you know. So if you're going to engage in second best activities, you're going to feel second best.
Yes, exactly. And
so you got to give it up. If you want to be treated first best, you can't be engaging in second best activities. And I think social media stalking is a second best person's activity. It's a fear-based activity because you're looking for evidence of something.
It is, and it doesn't feel good.
No.
It does not feel good. And you know, as you mentioned something really important that I wanted to bring up, actually, because yes, with the affirm away, I personally like affirmations, but you know, you've got to ask yourself, how are you actually showing up? Like you said, you're saying you're first best, but you're engaging in second best activities. You know, how is it you're showing up? If you want to be somebody that is loved, wanted, and secure, how are you actually showing up?
That's it.
Because you know, you need to aim for embodiment. So how do I think, feel, and act as this person? You know, you can't. I've tried it. I've tried repeating affirmations. Oh no, you know, and it just it's exhausting. And B, unless you are showing up in life as somebody who is that, you're not going to see a lot of difference. And even if you do, it's going to be fleeting.
And it takes a lot of time and energy. Like, unless you don't have a job, and you've got hours and hours. No, and that's the thing. People exhaust themselves trying to do a lot of affirmations, but when you've already got full-time work, or you're doing a job that's quite intense during the day, it's like, oh, now I've got to do this. It can be really draining. So Yeah, I think affirmations are good, but they're not the only way around the circle. They're not for everybody to be doing constantly, I think.
Exactly. And also, if your affirmation doesn't spark a particular feeling
Yeah.
either, if you're just repeating it mindlessly,
Yeah.
then you're not going to see much of a result, because as you know, it's belief plus emotion, isn't
Yes.
it? It's the emotion behind it that
Yeah.
manifests.
That's it. Yeah.
But yes, I think the trick is to ask yourself, okay, this is what I want. I want to be wanted, or I want to be loved, and or whatever it is that you want, and think, who am I as this? Not, I'll just think it all day. Who are you as that? How do you think? How do you act? How do you get out of bed in the morning as that person? How do you have a shower? And I think that's sort of another missing puzzle piece, which I don't really see a lot online explained. It is affirmations, or affirmations about the other party. But I think thank you so much for doing this video, and yes, I can't tell you how much you and your content has helped me over the years. And I really appreciate you coming on and doing this for me. But I think we shall start bringing it to a close now. We've been talking for quite a while, haven't we?
I know, it just goes so quick when we start talking. We go down these rabbit holes that are so interesting. And they're every day. For it doesn't matter what country you're in, what gender you are, what sexual preference you have, what culture you are. These things affect everybody around the world, because everybody, I think, wants to be connected to someone. We're not meant to be alone, so there might be a few people that like to be totally alone. Those people are usually people that have been hurt and are not willing to open themselves up again, in my experience. And there probably are some that genuinely don't want to be with someone. But for the rest of the population, this is something we have to learn to navigate and to get into the self-exploration, so that we can have an easy time out there with them, whoever that person is. And
exactly.
You've got a bit of peace in your relationship. I do too. It can be drama-free, it can be easy, it can be fun, it can be where you don't have a huge amount of bumps along the road anymore, because you've worked on your stuff, and the journey continues till the day we die, but it does get so much less.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And I'd noticed actually throughout, I was with my ex-husband for about 15 years.
Yeah.
And we spent that entire time in a power struggle.
Yeah.
And it's exhausting. And I really do feel for people that are stuck in that dynamic. I really do, because I know how debilitating it is, how exhausting it is, the resentment that comes along with it as well, which ultimately ended the marriage.
Yes.
And but now I'm in a situation where I don't need marriage to feel secure.
Yes.
It's a nice to have, but I don't need it, because I feel secure enough where we are. And that's it's such a weight off,
isn't it? And you're bringing your security to the relationship rather than looking to the relationship for the security.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But yes, thank you very much for coming on, and I will hopefully speak to you again soon.
Yes.
So I'm going to post this on my channel. I'll send everything to you, Agnes, but I will see everybody in the next video.
Lovely.